Now, if you look at different generations of the C-Class, you will notice that each and every one of them has been instrumental in establishing a new design philosophy for every other Mercedes-Benz car of that generation to follow. Despite that, every C-Class has had its own distinctive design that made sure that it looked like none other from the Mercedes-Benz lineup. Things, however, have changed because what you see next to me and what looks like a baby S-Class is actually the new W205 C-Class.
Honestly, it's the exact same thing that I would say about the new W206 C-Class. But before I tell you more about this car, please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and do consider giving us a like and sharing this video with your friends and family.
You see, unlike the BMW 3 Series, which feels like a 5 Series on a diet, or the Audi A4, which feels like an over-engineered VW Jetta, the Mini S-Class formula has worked extremely well for the C-Class. So it's no surprise that the new one continues to follow suit.
So you could think of the new C-Class to be a cocktail sausage to the S-Class's Frankfurter, but it has the same tasty recipe of advanced electronics and telemetry, and that is something that's going to make the competition feel outdated for a similar price. In fact, because this car is locally assembled, that price is very competitive.
And that locally assembled C-Class will not miss out on any of the new features that you will see here on these cars. There is no limited launch edition, so to say. The new C-Class looks handsome with the power bulges in the bonnet, the curvaceous bodywork, and that beautifully laid out dashboard, which seems like it's copied and pasted from the S-Class.
On the C300d, which copies styling cues from AMG's, you get a more bling grille. It's evolved the diamond grille to a more sophisticated grille where you can see these little three-pointed stars, a pattern very similar to what I have on my shirt. How many things are you copying? What does the C stand for? Cat? Copycat?
Well, let's call it a familial design instead of calling it a blatant copy. But it certainly goes after the angry cat of the segment, the Jaguar XE, in terms of the dynamics. It also challenges the A4 on the elegance and targets the new BMW 3 Series on space and convenience. To that effect, the new C-Class is longer and wider than before, without compromising on the aerodynamic efficiency. And it also sits on a longer wheelbase that liberates more room at the rear.
With the increased dimensions of the car, what's also increased, of course, is the rear seat space, and here's Bert telling you all about it.
Well, the C-Class was always a comfortable car in the back seat, and this seems to be a little more spacious, though I would have liked the backrest to have had a little more inclination so that you could rest back. Right now you're sitting a little more upright. If you notice my position, it is fairly upright, though there is a lot of room under the seat to spread your feet. The C-Class continues, the W206 continues to be ideally a four-seater. The middle seat right here, well, children would find space for themselves in here. The other problem being that the transmission tunnel, if you look over here, comes right in the way of keeping your feet, and that would take away precious foot room for the other passengers. But on the whole, it is a fairly comfortable space to be in, and I'm hoping over a longer distance and on these tight, twisty, narrow roads, it gives me a comfortable enough ride quality.
Sure, it's no match for the 3 Series Grand Limousine if you are going to be driven around. But most buyers in this segment aren't. This is why all the goodies are at the front. The cabin design of the outgoing C-Class is a timeless classic now, while the new one looks tech-laden with the 11.9-inch infotainment screen.
Hey Mercedes.
How may I help you?
It runs the latest NTG7 software OS telematics, which not only gets you wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but also gives you a more intuitive and slick user interface, replacing most of the switches and placing most controls easily at hand. It is complemented further by a floating digital instrumentation which lets you cycle between multiple styles to suit your mood or taste. There's also a full-screen navigation on the instrumentation. Both systems are easy to read while on the move, and the number of features they pack makes the competition feel outdated. Features I would have liked to see, however, on this generation of the C-Class would have been ventilated seats, a massage function, 360-degree cameras, a head-up display, and soft-touch materials even in the lower sections of the doors and seats. Otherwise, the new C-Class is loaded with many small but useful features. Do check out our detailed walk-around review to know more about what I'm talking about.
As before, Mercedes-Benz will let you choose between 3 variants for the C-Class. There's the C200 petrol and 2 diesels, the C220 and the C300. And what variant you choose essentially dictates the kind of color options that you will get inside the cabin. You have a brown, a white that you see right now, and an all black when you choose the C200 or the C220. And if you were to go with the C300, you get a two-tone brown and black, or you can have an all black. Now, why I'm pointing this out is because this is a CKD, and getting this kind of an options list on a CKD for interior choices, now that is a big deal. It's not an easy feat to achieve. So full marks to Mercedes-Benz for that. And it's not just the upholstery. Even the dashboard layout is different. Not the layout, but the dashboard materials are different. The C200 or the C220 will give you this combination of matte wood and aluminium. The entire design looks like it's inspired from the cabin or the trims that you see inside a yacht. This is something that we've seen in the Maybachs, and now that inspiration continues with the C-Class. It filters down to the C-Class so that S-Class inspiration is highlighted every now and then. Speaking of the sportier appeal, the C300d has a different dashboard design in terms of the materials that it uses. It has those metal inlays, and then you also get a flat bottom steering wheel with those 2 horizontal slats. So it just adds to that sporty touch, whereas the C200 or the C220 take the elegance route. Irrespective of what variant you choose, getting a good visibility all round is not a problem at all. So even if this is going to be your first luxury car, almost 50% of the C-Class buyers are first-timers into the luxury world, this is not going to feel unnerving at all. I mean, I'm driving here in Missouri, the roads are narrow and there are cars, buses, everything gunning at you, and still, getting a good line, getting a good visibility of all these tight corners, blind corners is not a problem at all. The A-pillar, not too intrusive despite the presence of a speaker. The wing mirrors are also designed in such a way that they don't intrude in your peripheral vision. They also don't have a lot of wind noise coming off them even at higher speeds. And in terms of the seating posture, it's all electronically adjustable, including the steering, even on the base C200. So that is good news. Also, you do get memory functions, so you can store your seat and your steering data, but you also get the user profiles on the infotainment, which means that the moment you or your spouse or anyone who's using the car gets inside the car and uses their finger to use the fingerprint scanner here, the profile is selected and all these settings are restored, including settings for the audio, settings for the ambient lighting, etc. The enthusiast in me also likes these power domes that you can see on the bonnet. I think especially around winding roads like these, they add to the sportier appeal.
Of course, those power domes would seem more natural on a V6 or a V8 engine, but the non-AMG C-Class saloons coming to us are only available with inline-4 turbocharged petrol or diesel options. They are longitudinally mounted to feed power to a rear-wheel drive system, and that is why the C-Class continues to have the long bonnet and the stubby boot like its predecessors. There is no rear-wheel steering on the India-spec C-Class, but honestly I never really felt the need for it, even on this drive which was full of narrow roads.
Irrespective of what variant you choose, you will get at least 200 horsepower at your disposal. And to add to it, Mercedes has finally now brought the ISG, or the integrated starter generator, and a 48-volt mild hybrid system to the India-spec C-Class. It was introduced with the previous generation, the facelift given to the previous generation, and now it makes its way with the new C-Class into the Indian market. So essentially what it does is that it will give you that additional torque fill. It will give you 200 Newton meters of additional torque boost or 20 PS of power boost as and when the system needs it. It's a mild hybrid system at the end of the day, and the 48 volt electronics mean that it responds quickly and gives you that torque fill as and when you need it. So if you were to pull a quick overtake or want to negotiate a gap in traffic, you don't have to wait for too long for the power to build up. That instantaneous EQ boost comes into function and you can pull that overtake without much planning. That said, if you are in eco mode, that is essentially where you are going to be maximizing range and you're going to be conscious about the economy that you're getting. In that mode, under 20 kilometers an hour, this system takes a while to respond. So if I were to quickly want to build speed from from as low as say 15-20 kilometers an hour, it takes a moment before the entire system, the gearbox responds and gives you that shove of power. But about 30 kilometers an hour, the roll-ons are super quick, just as you would expect of any 200 horsepower engine.
The ISG is the only hybrid tech that you will get with the new C-Class at the moment. Don't expect any plug-in hybrids from Mercedes-Benz India until there are favoring policies on that front. The C300d is undoubtedly my pick of the lot for the kind of throttle response and the on-tap performance that it offers. The C200 petrol feels subdued in comparison. Sorry, New Delhi. For the rest of the country, the torquey C200 diesel should achieve a great balance in between if you aren't necessarily looking for sportier styling or 3D audio.
What the new C-Class doesn't get is adaptive dampers, and that is to save costs both on the selling price and maybe service costs as well for all newcomers to the brand. But I quite like the kind of balance that they've achieved with the regular suspension setup, the standard suspension setup. So of course, dialing up sport mode isn't really stiffening up the chassis in any way. It's only making the engine and gearbox responses sharper. There's also a noticeable change to the way the brakes behave. The brakes feel nice and progressive in the sport mode, but the moment you shift to comfort or to the eco modes, the first 3-4 millimeters of brake pedal travel, you don't really feel any bite. It feels very spongy, so to say, and only then you get that sudden grabby bite from the brakes. So the sport mode is what I prefer in terms of the braking, but when you go into the individual mode, you can only set how the engine responds, how the ESP responds, and how the steering responds. They don't have an individual setting for the braking response, which I think they ought to have done, especially given the kind of difference that you have between these three modes. But like I said, no adaptive dampers, which means that you get only one suspension setup that is common across all driving modes. But I quite like the balance that they've achieved. It is quite sporty around winding roads like these, and even over poor road conditions, it doesn't feel like something you would complain about. It's just as comfortable as you'd expect a Mercedes-Benz to be. So yes, it looks like a baby S on the outside, it's almost like a baby S on the inside, there's a lot of tech as well. But no, you're not going to get that magic carpet ride that you get with the S-Class or even with the E-Class for that matter. So that's something for all C-Class owners to look forward to when you want to upgrade.
That said, the firm setup does make the car a bit bouncy at the rear when you negotiate undulations, ruts or joints at speed. And while it is a sportier drive, it still isn't a match for the 3 Series. The turn-ins don't feel as sharp as the 3, but the new C-Class certainly feels lighter on its feet compared to the outgoing car. If you're a casual driver then, you will love the balance between the sporty handling and the comfortable cruising that the new C-Class continues to achieve. Add to it the amount of new age tech that the C now brings to the table along with the beautiful cabin design, and you realize that the new C-Class is even more compelling than before.